This is the OMG Book Show with William O'Day, episode number 19.
Welcome to the OMG Book Show, where it's all about taking you into the brains of fantastic authors. No scalpels required. It's more than an interview, it's an experience. And now, your host, William O'Day.
Bam, what? All right, so what was that all about? It could be about nothing. It could just be something that occurred to me right before I hit the record button, and then it came out. However, in this case, it's not. There's a story behind this, but it's a short story. This past week or so, my daughters had a break from school for the week, and they watched more media than they usually do. We're not a huge media household, but they got to watch a good amount this particular time, and they were crazy over a Disney show called Liv and Maddie, whose titular characters, it's a one girl actor who plays two parts twins, I believe. Anyway, that's her signature, maybe their signature phrase or performance piece. Bam, what? And I don't know why she does it. It's just like it's what she does. And so what has been happening at my household for the past week is I have two daughters going around the house saying bam what at pretty much anything at the drop of a hat. You turn around, anything that requires a response of any kind apparently requires a bam what. So now you know what I've been dealing with for the last week. Anyway, welcome to the show today. Hello, everybody. Today, we've got a great show. We are talking with author Ryan Schow, and his last name is spelled S-C-H-O-W. Oh, no. Am I ruining it? I think that's right. S-C-H-O-W. And I mispronounced it as talking to him and finding out just about 98% of the people in his life upon first meeting him do. I said show or shao. I thought both of those were pretty good guesses, and yet I was still wrong. So it's Ryan Schow. He is the best-selling author, of the Last War series, which is very, very cool. And it's something that I've been getting into lately and really enjoying. And one of the aspects to it is what I love. Oh, sorry. I think I just bumped the mic there. One of the things I love about it is that it really goes into parenting. And obviously, hey, I'm a parent, so that's a big part of my life. Maybe it is yours, maybe not. But I think you would like the book either way. Let me say that first of all, because it's very exciting. Lots of action, lots of conflict and character development, that kind of thing. But for me personally, one of the things that really drew me in was this aspect of how do you be a parent? How do you be the best parent that you can be in a world that's gone crazy, like an apocalyptic environment? Like that's clearly brings out parenting choices and decisions that we don't typically face, or at least, the fortunate among us don't typically face on a daily basis. Which is really cool. It's just an interesting sort of conceptual, emotional framework to delve into. So anyway, he writes those books. They're very cool. I recommend checking them out. And in this interview, it's a great interview. We go into a lot of different topics. We look at his history of how he got into writing, and I think it can be summarized. And he was a failure for 20 years. Before becoming the success that he is today. And we just talk about, we go into that, and we have in past interviews as well, and Russell Blake comes to mind in particular, but just about how intrinsic failure is in being a part of life. I mean, it really is. And I mentioned it in this interview, and I'll say it quickly right here again, is the things that I regret most in life, and I'm not big on regret, and I just don't think it's a positive sort of mental exercise to indulge in, but to a degree, the things that I look back on and regret are the things that I didn't try at, or the things that I didn't try as hard as I felt I should have. They aren't the things that I totally went all in on and just blazed out in like an asteroid hitting, like Superman's spaceship channeling through the fields of Kansas or Nebraska or wherever that was. The things that I totally went all in on and failed spectacularly at, I don't regret those, because there is a feeling of like, well, I went for it, and I think Ryan definitely shares that perspective. Some of the other things we talk about in this interview are how Elon Musk was an inspiration for the idea behind the Last War series. And also Ryan talks about how learning to write to market, and Chris Fox's book, Write to Market, of the same name, has influenced his approach for this particular series. And we go into it, and some people in the authorly realm have like a real knee-jerk reaction, almost really to either way. You can see it on both sides of the spectrum. And we go into kind of what those two opposite positions are, and kind of what the position in the middle could be. And I think we both kind of feel like we agree in that respect. He also tells us about, we talk about high school and how that kind of affects your life, and how to get through it mostly, and how life gets better. Good news. It can definitely get better after high school, for most people at least. So anyway, we talk about all kinds of things. It's a great interview. Ryan is the type of guy or person really that I love talking to in interviews, because it's clear to me, and I don't know him outside of this interview, never even spoke with him before, other than just the initial kind of logistics of getting the interview in place. But it comes across in a very clear and immediate way that he thinks below the surface. Maybe you haven't gotten that about me yet, but you probably have. Is I also like to look at life and think about it below the surface, not just what's happening on the surface, but why is it happening? Has it happened in the past? Is it likely to happen in the future? And just topics in general. Is like, let's look below the surface and see how things work. And in this interview, we kind of touch on a bunch of different things with that sort of lens in mind. So let's get to the interview, and we are going to do that with surgical gloves on, metaphorical scalpel in hand. Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a new voice, at least on the post-apocalyptic side of things, which, as you're probably aware, I'm a big fan of. And he is exploding onto the scene with some absolutely fabulous books. I'm reading his first one now. It's called The Last War, and his name, and I'm going to nail the last name on this pronunciation, mainly because he just helped me with it, but is Ryan Schow. Thank you, Ryan, so much for joining us today.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Right on. And for those of you out there who would have mistakenly said Schow or maybe even show, you're wrong. So now you know.
That's most people.
Yes, that was actually me too. We had a guessing game before we started recording, and I got it wrong, just like everybody probably does.
Yep.
Right on.
I think there's been like 8 people in all of my 45 years that have gotten it right. So
Schow, and it is a very interesting last name. What is the ethnic background? Where does that last name come from?
It's from Holland. So yeah, Holland is my background. Okay,
and then how far back do those progenitors? When did they first kind of move out of Holland to other places?
I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say probably about 4 generations ago. But my aunt does genealogy, and she can tell the history of my whole family back to like the 1400s. So, yeah, I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say probably about 4 generations ago. My grandmother was from England. So.
Right on. And does she like track it electronically, like on Ancestry, or does she have like just a big giant paper on her wall at home?
I think she probably did Ancestry, but I haven't talked to her for a while. And the last that I had heard from my dad is that she was back into the 1600s, which completely blows my mind. And I'm a huge history buff, so some of the stuff that I was hearing was actually pretty cool.
That is very cool. A crazy idea just occurred to me. And I don't think anyone in my family has traced our ancestry back anywhere near that far. But I'm sure as you go back, and I don't know how many details you could get on people's lives, but it would be so cool to kind of find out, like your great grandfather or mother, on your dad's side or whatever, like what that person did in their lifetime as a career and everything. And who knows, maybe that could even form the basis of like a short story or novel or something.
I know that would actually be really cool. In fact, I've written a couple of things where I've done some generational stories in my previous series, the Swan series. I went into some history back probably about 50, 60, 70 years ago. And I hated history as a kid because we studied stuff that I really wasn't interested in. But now as a writer, I look at history and I go, man, I really like this stuff. This is pretty cool. And as you begin to create these worlds for yourself, you become more and more interested in all of the tiny details. It's those little tiny details that add so much authenticity and really texture to a story. So yeah, I think in this last probably 15, maybe 20 years, I've been super excited about little bits of history. So to see what my family might have done way back when, I'm already making notes to call my aunt. So I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, very cool. And I totally agree with you. Like, it seems like, and I guess it's highly dependent upon the teacher, but I do recall innumerable teachers back in my elementary, high school, junior high days where learning about history was really just more about rote memory and regurgitation of dates,
Yeah, man, it was stale toast.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, I mean, and what's happening behind those dates, like when you dig a little deeper into the stories, is about like, and I read this actually in your bio, and it makes for good stories, is the conflict, and people's aspirations at a crossroads.
Yeah, I think that really marks history really well. And it's funny because history, of course, is always told by the victors. But if you can catch multiple pieces of history, rather multiple authors of history, right, you can start to kind of piece together maybe what some of that truth might have been. And, I find so much interest in the stories in those little bits of unknown, where you can go in and you can craft a tale out of the unknown. And I think it's intriguing, maybe, if it's just for me, but I've found other people that look at history and go, man, I didn't know that. And I think that's pretty cool. There's so much story in those little pieces of the unknown, I think, and that's where I tend to thrive.
Yeah, that is, and it's such an absolutely true point. The idea that the official version of history that is passed down is most often dictated by whoever won in any particular conflict. And one story, and I'm probably going to butcher the name of this book, but I think it was something called like The Untold History of the United States, or I forget, Howard Zinn or Zahn, or anyway, something. But it basically takes that tact of like looking at a bunch of different events in history and then kind of redescribing them, not just through the lens of whoever happened to prevail. And it's like you're saying, it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Slayer, and Vampire Hunter, or something like that. They wrote a story about Abe Lincoln as a vampire slayer, and I thought, oh, this would be interesting. And I read it, and I was like, wow, this is a really amazing history, like on Abraham Lincoln. I don't know how true it was. I know he didn't slay vampires, but there's that writer. I forget what his name was. He did Pride and Prejudice and Zombies as well. It's an interesting take on history, and I think that's the thing that's interesting about history is that there's so much possibility in it. But in the Last War series doesn't really take history. The post-apocalyptic fiction doesn't take history into consideration. But in my previous series, the Swan series, it really did. And my first book that I wrote as well is called Potter's Field. I haven't published it yet. Everyone that I know that's read it is itching to get me to do it. But it's not adventure. I mean, it's like Nicholas Sparks on steroids. But that particular story had a whole lot of history in it as well, back in the World War II era. I love the World War II era. So
yeah, it's I guess times of great conflict inherently provide times of great interest also.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to ask you, I looked through your Amazon page and I haven't checked too much into the Swan series, but I did get a general feel for them, like genetics, genetic manipulation and development, and
exactly
strong female protagonists. What got you, it seems like it's not a total divergence, say, from going like kids fiction to romance or something, but it is a new direction with The Last War. What got you pointed over in this other direction?
Well, it's really funny because the last war was really more than anything like a marketing test. I graduated at California State University of Sacramento with a marketing degree, and going into marketing when you're writing is very much different from marketing when I graduated back in 1996. And so it's a whole new take on things. So when I wrote the Swan series, I wrote a series that could kind of genre blend. And as I was going through there, I was thinking, oh man, I want to put a couple pieces of stuff together. I'm a super, super huge like conspiracy buff, not because I believe in these things, but because like we were talking about in history with conspiracy, there's so many unknowns, but it's got a lot of eyeballs on it and people talking and interest. And so I thought, man, I could do something kind of cool like that. So it ended up being, genetically modified teens. And as I'm going through there, I'm creating little bits of storyline that hit around a couple different elements. So the problem I had with that series, I could never really get it to settle perfectly into one genre or another. So it made it really hard to market.
Right.
So I started studying marketing, and I've got several friends that have been extremely helpful in me coming up through the world of indie publishing. Abby Lynn Knorr, who is an amazing author. And then, of course, Shane Silvers, who's just absolutely killing it in the indie field. Both of those have very clear genres that they're in. And so they kind of encouraged me to look at that. And then I started listening to this guy, Chris Fox, who's he's the author of the Tech Mage series. And this guy's amazing. He saved my life. He started talking about going in and writing to market. So I thought, what's an interesting market that I could write to? And so I started to kind of study the post-apocalyptic fiction market. I mean, I was reading the books by Riley Flynn and Harley Tate and Ryan Westfield, just to kind of see if I had an interest in that genre, if I could write that genre. And I've been writing for so long now, I think like 22 years, that I feel like I can write in any genre that I want to. So I got in there, and that's where The Last War started. The Last War started with an interview that I listened to by Elon Musk, who's warning of the dangers of AI. And I think he made some in a butcher, but he made a statement that said, we've got to be able to go in and put AI regulation in place before machines start walking on the streets and shooting people.
Yeah, so, I read that same interview. It's totally fascinating.
It's super freaky too when you start thinking about it. So of course, naturally, as a researcher, I delved into everything Elon Musk and AI, and I was like, holy crap, there is some crazy stuff out here right now. So as I was thinking about it, I watched this interview by this robot. I'm trying to remember what her name was, but it was an AI robot. She was granted the first citizenship in Saudi Arabia, and she did an onstage interview, and it was super creepy. So I started looking back at the early iterations of her as a machine, and there was a point where she had said something to the extent of, I would eliminate all humans, and I'm like, holy cow, there's a story in this. so that's kind of how The Last War was born. And I love San Francisco. I live a couple hours away. I'm in Sacramento, but I've been in San Francisco quite a few times. I've got family in there, and the streets are always like so congested. I'm like a nervous driver in San Francisco.
Oh, it's insane. I mean, because there's just like, if you go during normal hours, which is basically from 4 a.m. to 2 at night, then like you're up and down these crazy hills, and there's lights and cables and cars and like people dashing across. I'm just like, I just hope I don't hit anyone. That's what I'm hoping for.
Congestion. Yeah. And it's been, I've had so many close calls, and I've seen some really crazy stuff, especially you get out in San Francisco on a Saturday night, this kind of things that you see, you're like, wow. And for me loving culture, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But at the same point in time, it is super, super congested. Yeah. And I think that makes for a lot of really good, like intrinsic tension. Like it's almost like you're being stuck. You're stuck in a shooting gallery is what it is. And so The Last War was me taking some of my experiences of feeling claustrophobia inside the city, and then now you turn it into a shooting gallery with AI, and I was like, holy crap, there's a lot of tension, and there's a lot of action. I wanted to kind of pull action right out of the gate with this book.
Oh yeah. And that's definitely how The Last War starts. It's like you get the briefest introduction to McNamara, the main character.
Yeah, Cincinnati, yeah.
And she's just I like the conversational tone. It really pulls you in easily. It's kind of like it's a bit like entering a daydream, you're just like, oh, here we go. Let's go. And then a few pages in, you're just like, whoa, Mo, what's going on?
Oh yeah, all hell breaks loose real fast for sure.
And right on. Is that an approach that you have taken in the Swan books as well, or you were specifically going for that here?
No, you know what? It was the opposite in the Swan series. And first of all, I absolutely love the reader comments because, even though I have a beta group of readers that really give me feedback, it's like having people that you don't know come in and give you reviews. Right. You really start to kind of put together after 40 reviews. You start to look at and go, okay, I'm seeing some things that I've got to work on here. And that's the great thing about being an indie writer and writing with Kindle is that you can always update the versions of your book when you have readers that will pull out, little problems here and there. So with the Swan series, I tried several different ways to market it, and I put it into eventually kind of like urban fantasy, even though it's not really urban fantasy, because I'm on a more of an adult level. And the Swan series initially started out a little bit too slow because I went through introspection for about 40 pages. So I ended up going in probably about 5 months ago, and pulling like 20 pages out and just really condensing the first little intro to get into school. I mean, it's about a little chubby girl that's having just the hardest time in life. She's got self-esteem issues beyond the normal. And so it started off a little bit slower, and I didn't grab people right away, even though the book is amazing. I love that series so much. It doesn't kind of kick off the way I think people are wanting it to. I mean, we're in such an ADD society these days that you really need something to just kind of grab you by the eyeballs and hold you glued to the page. Yeah. Quite frankly, for as long as you can. And so the pacing in the Last War series is very much different than the pacing in the Swan, but the Swan has way more adult content than the Last War. I've tried to keep the Last War almost as PG-13 as you could. I mean, I didn't go in and swear, which I swear like a sailor in real life. Is bad, but I thought, I read a review by a gentleman on one of the other books that I was reading, the post-apocalyptic series, and he had said, I'd love to be able to recommend this book to my church, but I can't because there's too much swearing in there. And so when I was originally crafting The Last War, I went through on all of the top books and I read all of the reviews, the good ones and the bad ones, and especially the bad ones, because I wanted to know where people got hung up in the book, so that when I went through there and I was writing The Last War, I was kind of cognizant of that. In other words, I wanted really strong character development because there was complaints that a lot of the fiction doesn't really have as much character development. I wanted likable characters, so I really tried to use quite a bit of humor as best as I could, for the end of the world. And
there's a lot of opportunities for macabre humor in the end of the world scenarios.
Exactly. So one of the things too is there's no cussing, and that's the hardest thing for me because going through there, we lean on, cuss words a lot as impact words. And so having none of that, it really kind of forced me to write a little bit differently. So, there's not the celebration of gore. There's no cuss words. There's, no sex in there. And if so, everything is kind of glanced upon. But still, when I put it to my beta readers, I said, man, does it lose any of the authenticity? And it's like, no, feels great. So I've carried that through in the 0 Hour, which is like book 1.5 that's coming out on the 10th, and also the Ophidian Horde, which is book 2. And then I'm writing the third book in the series right now, which is the Infernal Regions. And so again, I still keep myself on track, making sure that, if people in church want to refer it to their friends and whatnot, there's not going to be an issue. And I think that's really kind of helped me develop out better as a writer, make me choose different words. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to bring up. What you're talking about, Chris Fox and writing to market, and some, there's kind of, I'm pretty much in the middle. There are some authors that fall on either side. But, like writing to market is like losing your soul and you're not really doing it for real, whatever. And for me, it just doesn't make sense. It's like really all you're doing is taking something. I mean, you could do it very poorly. If you say, write something that you absolutely hate, then you're probably going to get burned out and quit at some point. And I think that's what people that have this criticism are talking about. Yeah. But I think kind of what you're doing and what I think is very feasible and what I do to a degree as well, but it sounds like you're kind of a little more on point. But you just find something that people out there are already interested in and that you also are interested in. And you're like, okay, there's a confluence. Let's just jump in that.
For sure. Yeah, I found that that was initially my reaction as well, which was, man, I want to write something I want to write. For me, I'm a huge study of writing technique. You can get really stale with it if you don't inject personality in it. And really one of the best ways that I found to inject personality in things, I don't know if you've ever read it. I'm sure you've read it or seen it, but I read Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, and Fight Club and, his books like Invisible Monsters. These books are freaking hilarious. I mean, it's the ability for Chuck Palahniuk to capture humor and use different words to make the reading really, really interesting,
right.
Like suck your face into the book is incredible. So he's one of my really big influences. Obviously I can't use it here, but as I started to kind of branch out into different authors and think, I want to hear some different voices and see how these people sound. Over the last 2 decades, I've really kind of found my voice. So in telling a story, I almost look at it like post-apocalyptic fiction is the backdrop for creating tension, for atmosphere, but the stories are really about the people. It's about what the people do, how they react to impossible situations. What do you do when your moral line is tested? And in this case, Cincinnati or Sin is very kind of scared for what's going to happen to Macy. She doesn't want Macy to have to do what you really have to do to survive in the apocalypse. And so that moral conundrum really kind of drives a lot of the heart of the story. And then of course Stanton too, you get a stockbroker who's used to doing business on the phone, and now you put a gun in his hand and say, protect your family. It's like, holy shit, what are you going to do now? So,
and for folks that aren't aware of that, we're talking about the husband of the family.
Yes, in the last war. So when I looked at the post-apocalyptic fiction and I read through, I said, okay, like Chris Fox says, he says, go in and find 5 tropes, 5 similarities that each of these novels have, and kind of keep yourself in those guidelines. And me, I'm not a person that likes to have chains on me at all. I'm not a person who's really ever liked authority or being told what to do. And so when I looked at this, I thought I really want to kind of write a story that fits within these, but something that I like. And I ended up really, really loving this story. And I'm so thrilled with the direction that this series is going. And I'm at a point in time where I'm really immersed in the characters. And so as a writer, when you get into your characters' heads, it's very easy to kind of know what they're going to do, but also there's so many surprises along the way, even as a writer. I mean, right. I'm writing in the infernal regions right now, and I've got the whole book mapped out, and I'm in this particular scene, and as I'm writing it, it's like all these other things are beginning to kind of take shape, and I'm going, okay, this is how amazing scenes are born. So, in one fashion, I appreciate the idea of writing to market from a business standpoint. And the Last War series has exploded. I mean, I did more in 3 weeks with the Last War series than I did an entire year before that with the Swan series. and I know, right? Well, and the Swan series is like so in depth. I'm about ready to write the last book, book 9 in that series called Crucified, and I'm tackling that after the Infernal Regions. But as much as I love that series, it's been hard for it to gain traction versus the Last War. It gained traction almost immediately. I think I've done more in this last 2 months than I did in the full year with my full series before. So it's really taken off huge and getting exposure. And I think that's what we all want as an indie author is, let me get my voice out there. Let me find an audience. Let me build this audience. And if the audience likes you and they like your voice and they like the stories that you tell, they'll follow you.
Yeah, and absolutely.
So I think that's why I'm so happy about what the Last War series has done.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good things to like about just being the first book thus far. But I think I read somewhere, who was it, like Lawrence Block or one of the heavyweights of like story building world.
Yeah,
and he was basically like every great story surrounds or is involved with a family, and that's it. It makes kind of gut level sense because for any individual person living a reasonably normal life, their families and the relationships they have with those people within their family are the absolute most important thing in the universe.
Yeah.
And so when you set a family in a fictional world and bring it to a reader and then throw problems in there, then it's really easy to kind of, you're almost like that, another family member going along for the adventure.
Exactly. Well, I've got a big family too. I mean, anybody who's like, I had several people that have read the Swan series and like, man, I can't believe this is written by a 40 or 45-year-old man, because my character is, a 16, 17, 18-year-old girl. And then in this book series, I was thinking to myself, should I do a male character or female character? Well, 80% of the people that read books are going to be women anyway. So I thought if I write a female character, it gives me a greater opportunity to kind of identify with an audience. So I come from a big family. I've got 4 sisters, and I've been around women all my life. I've been married for 25 years. So, I mean, I have, I think, probably as close to an understanding of the female mind that a man can possibly have, which means I probably know about 25% of what goes on.
Hey, that's still an admirable amount.
I know, right? But certainly enough that I feel like I'm okay tackling this series with the main character being a woman. And of course, there's a lot of concern with what do you do with your marriage inside of this? There's so much stress and tension. So, in going through with this series and writing this series, I've really kind of enjoyed taking on the character of Cincinnati, but some of the characters that are coming through now in the Ophidian Horde, like Rex and Ryder, are very heavily male. I've got a big background in martial arts. I've got a second-degree black belt in Ishinryu and Shorinryu as well. And my sensei, who's a very, very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, is basically a tactical weapons instructor. So there's a whole lot of things in my own real life that I'm able to kind of pull into this story for authenticity. And so I think Chris Fox never really said, or maybe he did and I missed it, but he never really said that once you get into a story, it doesn't matter what the genre is. If you love it and you love writing it and people respond to it, man, keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the points you were talking about earlier, and then I have heard so many times over these interviews with some great authors, very successful authors, is that the kind of the overarching background of turmoil, conflict, or whatever, and a lot of times thus far it's been post-apocalyptic or thrillers of some kind. Yes. They end up just being the set piece upon which you then focus in on what's going on with these characters and the conflicts and tensions between characters, and that's where the real focus is.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you know what, too, when you go in and you as a writer, when you go in and you kind of study your market and, you study the audience, you start to find out, at least as a writer, what pieces are either missing or you would like to see. And, there's not too much humor that I've found in post-apocalyptic fiction or too much romance. I mean, you look at it and you go, romance, end of the world, people dying, maybe doesn't match up. So, when I was thinking about how do you survive a post-apocalyptic world, the way that you survive it is in each other. And you have to have people that you care about. Love has to drive you through that stuff. I mean, there's only so many revenge tales that you can tell in post-apocalyptic fiction before someone gets tired and says, man, I want something more than this. And so I wanted to try and bring in a couple of elements that maybe I hadn't seen before to kind of distinguish things. And a sense of humor, man, at least for me, gets me through so many difficult times. It has gotten me through so many difficult times that I feel like injecting some of that into the story, especially through family, was important. And I think it's worked out well.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I wanted to touch on that you had just kind of mentioned there was I really think it's fascinating what you're talking about with Cincinnati, trying to, as a parent, kind of, I don't know, like figure out how to best parent to her daughter Macy in this new world, because I've got 2 daughters, 8 and 10 now, and of course we're not at this point, and hopefully not anytime soon, in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, I hope never.
Yeah, exactly. And so for the most part, I try to protect their innocence and like let them grow up at their own pace. But of course, in a different kind of world, like in the one you're describing in your book here, that sort of parenting approach would be totally impractical and actually terrible, because it doesn't introduce kids to a very dangerous real life. And so, yeah, as a parent, that's one of the things I find fascinating about the story as well, is how do you navigate like kind of becoming a new parent to your kid?
Yeah, it really takes on it really takes on a whole new element, because you're right. I mean, you've got all these moral conundrums that fall in place. I'm a huge fan. I didn't start out this way, but I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead. I mean, watching that and kind of seeing this really ugly landscape where there really is just survival. I mean, the happy moments are so hard to make, but you look at it and you go, how do these people evolve, and how do you raise a kid up in this, in this horrifying world? And so with Macy, the one thing that her mom doesn't want is she doesn't want her daughter to become a killer at 16. Right. And, having to defend herself, there's this push and pull between her and Stanton and Cincinnati's brother-in-law, Rex, that, when you're trying to learn how to use a gun, there's always that other thing that's sitting on the side of it, which is using a gun means killing somebody, it means shooting somebody. And how does a 16-year-old process that? And how do you process that as a parent? How do you look at it and say, this is what my child has to do to survive? And you kind of hope that there's going to be that other side, that side where you can relax and go, you know what, the world's back to normal again. And when that never comes, or the possibility of it never comes, you have to look at it and make some really tough decisions. And now Cincinnati, being a nurse, an ER nurse, she's spent her career saving lives, and so the idea now that they have to take lives to survive is the moral conundrum that really kind of drives the character Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And folks, I think we have just given you a general overview and big reasons to dive into the series and check it out. It is totally cool. But one thing I wanted to touch on, which you've mentioned a few times here, and I was curious about, you had said, I think a couple of times, that you have been writing for 20 years. And then, yes. But on Amazon, and maybe we have different pen names or different mediums, but I only see like the Swan series starting, I think, published in 2016. What, in the interim of that time, what was going on there?
Lots and lots and lots of failure.
Oh yeah.
I tried to go through the traditional publishing route, and me being so blockheaded and so like focused in one direction, I'm a type A personality. I kept thinking, I'm going to get this. Now, when I first started writing, it was back when I got together with my wife, was about the time, I think 1992 is about when I started writing, 91, somewhere around there. So whatever that is. When I started writing, I had the idea that I wanted to, get published traditionally. There was no Kindle. I don't even think there was Amazon or the internet. God, I'm dating myself. But, there wasn't these traditional or there wasn't these alternative approaches to publishing. Of course, in the indie world, if you self-publish, you're not a real author quite yet, was the approach. So I says, like, okay, I'm going to get in and I'm going to become an author. So as I started writing, I started putting together a storyline. I happened to go to Sac State University, CSUS, and my father was, or one of my teachers was Nicholas Sparks' father. It was Organizational Behavior Environmental 103 class, and it taught about business relationships. And so I had a chance to kind of meet Nicholas Sparks' father, who's a well-known male romance author. And when I was talking to him, he says, "Oh, you have the same personality profile that my son has." I said, "Oh, who's your son?" He says, "Nicholas Sparks." He's, and he said,
"You're like,
what do you want to do?"
Nicholas Sparks?
Well, this is before he even had the Notebook out.
Oh, okay.
So the Notebook came out in 1995, and I had class with him in I think like 1994, and he had just been picked up on a contract where his first book, he made $1 million. That was his advance. And I'm like, holy cow, that's a good way to make a living. And he was in sales, just like I was at the time. And he grew up reading Stephen King. So I'm like, oh man, we got all these things in common. So I started kind of reading his books and studying. I started writing this book, Potter's Field, which really is kind of about it's a love triangle gone wrong in the 1940s. And it's really such an amazing story that no one really ever looked at. And so I wrote this story, and it took me the better part of, I think, 2 years to write it. And then I just kept revising, trying to get someone to pick it up. But the world of writing and getting published is very, very small. And what I found out along the way through, gigantic stacks of rejection letters where people would reject me without even reading my stuff, what I found was that usually you have to know somebody in the industry. You need to get some sort of referral in there. And this is, of course, it's not the case all the time, but by and large, I find that it usually was the case. So
yeah, it's definitely a big open door.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just got crushed over and over and over again. So then I was like, okay, well, I don't have any, writing credentials, so I've got to go get some. So I started getting published, short stories getting published in, writing journals like the Literary Journal and stuff like that. So I have a lot of short stories that are traditionally published out there. But again, that didn't really help. And I got frustrated, and I quit for a couple years here and there. But writing just kept gnawing at me. It's like that thing that you just have to do, no matter how hard you put it off. You have to do it.
It's a beautiful disease, right?
It is a really beautiful disease. It's a beautiful disease when you get it right. It's just a disease when you don't get it right.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So when I started studying this, there was an author, Amanda Hawking, and I read a review on her, an interview on the success that she had with her novel. I was like, holy cow, she's done great with Amazon publishing. So I thought I really need to kind of start looking at this. So of course, being blockheaded, I kept trying the traditional route. So when I put Swan on and I started making money, I was like, oh man, I'm making money. Of course, I took the whole wrong approach to getting it done. And I didn't make the money that I needed to be able to get out of, my super full-time job now. And so I just kind of kept at it. But my first publishing credits on Amazon started in 1996, but the Last War series only came out last month. So it only came out, I think, January 13th or December 13th is what it was. December 13th is when it came out, and then January 18th is the Ophidian Horde. And so this series is really, really new, and it's kind of taken everything that I've learned in, my 22 years of writing and now this last year of marketing and put them all together. But writing's never been one of those things that's hard for me. I feel like I've really studied and found a way to make this very easy. So for me, The Last War was easy to write. I think I wrote it in 3 weeks and took a week and a half for editing and beta readers. And the Ophidian Horde, I did the same thing. It was about 3-4 weeks, doing that with a 60-hour-a-week job. So I got the writing thing down pretty good.
Now, are you still at the 60-hour-a-week job?
Yep, I'm still at the 60-hour-a-week job. Yeah, they pay me a good money to be there. So it really, the 60-hour-a-week job covers a lot of my budget for marketing. And then, of course, in California, especially Sacramento, it's starting to become like San Francisco. Everything's super expensive. So home prices are jumping up and car prices are jumping up and everything's kind of jumping up. So I figure I stay there to the point where I can replace that income. And believe it or not, I'm actually not that far away, but I'm really good at what I do in my outside world as well. So that's been beneficial. But I've been doing that for about 20 years too.
Right on. And then what is this job that's taking you away from readers?
I'm a sales manager at the second largest dealership, Nissan dealership in Northern California. First largest dealership actually in Northern California.
Oh, so okay, that's making sense because I have just looking through your bio and your Facebook feed, I'm sensing a deep and committed love of the automobile. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, baby. I love cars. You read in my Swan series and yeah, she's kind of obsessed with Audis. My main character is, and I am too. When I was younger, I flipped a Prelude into a ditch upside down. I barely escaped, massive bodily mangling.
Wow.
By probably about 4 or 5 feet. There was a telephone pole in this ditch that I dropped this Prelude in upside down. And so I've always kind of had cars. After that, I've always kind of lowered my cars, put them on a little bit wider wheels so that I wouldn't flip again. And so when I went to go work at an Audi dealership, and the top salesman said, what do you drive right now? I says, well, I drive a Honda Accord and I have a BMW. And he says, when I get done telling you about the Audis, you're never going to want to drive anything again in your life. And I was like, okay, great. Okay, I'm listening. Go ahead. And I bought my first Audi in 2004, and I've driven only Audis since then. And so, I've got this love for driving. I really am a driver. There's four things that I love most in life. First of all is my wife, but second of all is I love driving, and I love karate, and I love writing. So I'm really in this great place in my life where I get to do all four actually.
Yeah, that is amazing. And so I think what you're saying, if we're reading between the lines, is you lowered the cars, you put on the wider wheels, stiffer suspension, etc., so that when you were driving dangerously fast on back roads, you could do it without dying. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was funny. I actually, I had a tournament up in at the Horizon Hotel up in Hotel and Casino up in Lake Tahoe, and I lived about an hour and 25 minutes away in Sacramento, an hour and 30 minutes away. And so, one day I had the right music. I was on the way up to the tournament, and I got up there in just maybe a minute or two over an hour, and I looked at my average speed, and I was clocking 95 average. It's a beautiful drive up to Tahoe, lots of windy roads, but yeah, I mean, I've definitely pushed the envelope in driving quite a bit. I'm calming down a little bit now, but I do love the adrenaline rush of cars. I'm an adrenaline junkie, which is why The Last War is such a fun series, because it's like an adrenaline junkie's dream.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And have you had the pleasure, and this seems like it would be right up your alley, have you been to Germany, Bavaria, et cetera, and had a chance to cruise on the Autobahn?
No, and I am so starved for travel. You have no idea. I'm starved for travel because all of my sisters I had one of my sisters lived in London for 6 months on a work visa, and she absolutely loved it. All my other sisters have traveled to Europe and, to Mexico. And I think the furthest I've been, is maybe the Caribbean. The only time I've been out of the United States is in the Bahamas. And I've been as far as Florida, but I really want to go to New York and Europe. And having this job in the auto industry, you're really kind of, I don't know, having the job in the auto industry and then writing as a 20 to 25 hour a week job after this, with me being as focused as I am, I've never really made the time for travel, and I'm regretting that mightily.
I'm not sure I would see how it'd even be possible, because I think I read you have 2 kids also, right?
My little kids are fur balls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my little kids are kittens, and
all right, that helps with the time commitment. Because for me, it wasn't adding up. I was like, wait, this job, and then writing, and then these 2 kids. This is like you have a time machine or something.
Oh man, I don't know how I do it sometimes. Well, trying to make space in there for working out and also being a good husband throughout all of it is certainly a challenge. But I've developed expensive taste in homes and cars lately, and so I'm trying to get everything paid off so that once that's done and I've got a good nest egg, I've got a really good writing background behind me. All my sisters are all in banking and financial planning, so they keep me straight when it comes to money. But
yeah, well, I think one of the things I'm sensing here, and that you hear so often, is a lot of times when somebody hits some level of success as a writer, people look at it and be like, "Oh, wow, you just came out of the nowhere and hit it out of the park." And what you're saying, and what I've heard so many times before, is actually no, there's this kind of the rest of the iceberg under the surface of the water, and it's been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Working through it, figuring it out, like getting it to a next level.
Yeah, I really am kind of an overnight success that took 20 years to develop. So yeah, there was a lot of struggle, a lot of rejection. I mean, and I'm okay with the rejection in the car business. I haven't sold since I think 2001. But, one of the things that I used to tell my guys when I train them, I still tell them this today, is look, man, if you fail 75% of the time in this business, you're a success. And, I kind of took a lot of that to heart when I was trying to get published traditionally, is that a lot of this failure, it's necessary. It makes you better. It forces you to be better. Absolutely. And rejection is something that's gigantic. I mean, I got I got a 1-star review, I think in Swan. Some lady just hammered me, and I was like, oh my God, inside I was like shaking. And, this is my first 1-star review. And of course, I'm looking for therapists. Do I need an hour? and going, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Should I pull my book?
Do you need like one designated hour per 1-star review?
Yes, I think that it used to be that now. And then I realized like I had someone troll me on, and I'm starting to find this. I had someone troll me on The Last War and give me a 2-star review that says there's no action and characters didn't make good decisions. And I couldn't even make it through chapter 2. Well, chapter 2 is huge and it's all straight action. So I'm like, man, I just got trolled. So now I look at it and I go, hey, it's okay, man. You can't make everything right for everybody. You just do the best you can with the people that read those books. And I think I've done a pretty good job there. But yeah, rejection is something that is really big. But if you can take the rejection, you can grow from it, and you can sit down as a writer. And this is the case in life too. When I've got my guys in front of me too, and having a conversation about success in life, it's like you have to fail enough, because failing forces you to grow. Same as you lose a fight when you're in karate. You get your ass kicked in a fight. You look at it and go, man, I didn't bring enough to the table here. Or maybe my mind was someplace else, or I should have done this, I should have done that. And if you keep at it and you just find ways to improve every single day, you'll get better and better and better. There was one guy, and I'm not going to say his name, because he really is an enigma within the writing community. He's got great stories, but man, they're chock full of errors. The covers are terrible, and everything that could possibly be wrong in this book is wrong, but the stories, and he is a huge success.
Hey, I love Stephen King. What problem do you have with it?
It is definitely not Stephen King. But no, this guy just managed to somehow get it right, and that's the only time I've ever really seen this overnight success. The guy's like, I don't care about reviews. People keep reading it, and I don't care about errors, because kids see errors in their cell phones all the time. And I was like, how is this guy successful? And he's the sweetest guy in the world. I mean, you listen to him talk. He's just, the guy's a big teddy bear. But that was the first time I've looked at it, and I've said to myself, man, this guy just completely bumped his way into success, and he kept at it, and he's done good with, some of his later series, and he's kind of tried to go clean it up. But by and large, man, there's no one that's really an overnight success in this industry. You really have to work at it, and the more you work at it, the easier it becomes. And so when you get to the place that I got to, I look at it and say the challenge is not writing. The challenge is not storytelling. The challenge is trying to get it in front of as many people as you can. And that's really the big area that most writers get stuck, is they say, okay, I wrote it, I put it out there. Now, when's it going to sell? Well, you don't realize there's millions and millions of people online, and there's millions of books online. And how do you get one book in front of other people? And it still amazes me. I mean, I think I sell 175 books on average a day, and I still look at it and go, where are these people coming from? And how did they get to my book? And this is awesome. I mean, every day is I feel like I get excited. I wake up in the morning, I go, oh, I got 40 books sold today. I'm super happy. It starts my day off right. So, but it took a lot of work to get here.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. And it's having an interview with Russell Blake a while back. One of the things he said, and it reflects on what we're talking about here, is life in some sense is all about failure. It's about trying things and failing and putting them aside and trying something else. And it's like you're saying, you not only do you, when you fail at something, you then forces you to become stronger and try something else. But if you don't step up to the plate and try in the first place, then you don't even have a chance at really accomplishing anything meaningful.
Exactly. I mean, you fail at 100% of things you don't try at. That's an age-old saying, but there's so much truth to it. And I love Russell Blake, by the way. His little post-apocalyptic series, The Day Before Never, I think is what it's called, is awesome. Russell Blake is a great writer. So, and you know what? He's one of those guys that I believe he came out of traditional publishing into the indie world, and has done really, really well. And it helps that he's a great writer. And, I always try and reverse engineer the success of some of these writers, which takes a lot of, hunting around. I mean, I really do kind of stalk these writers and go, okay, what do their ads look like when they're putting AMS or Amazon ads together? What's the writing look like? Where do they advertise? These guys that advertise on Facebook, I look at their Facebook ads and go, well, man, how are these guys doing it? And so, it's been a big education, marketing, but it was a big education for me initially writing as well. And I think if you love it, keep doing it, and keep doing it. Even like I tell my wife, she goes, when are you going to give up this writing dream? And she's always been the most supportive person ever. She's an amazing wife. But I said, when I get successful or I die, and whichever comes first. And if I get successful, I'll never stop writing. And, if I die, I will have been writing up until that point. So I can't stop. I've realized that a long time ago. It's in me too much. So I think that you don't get scared to fail if you've got that deeper commitment. And that deeper commitment gets you through life. It's really what it does.
I was totally with you until the end there. I think you still, or maybe I think I've got the commitment, but I think you can still feel the fear, but you're totally, you understand that the rewards on the other side, even in failure, are so absolutely worth it. I mean, I was just thinking, like, when I look back at my life, and I wonder if it sounds like you're the same way, the things that I end up feeling like, I regret to some degree, they're not the things that I tried and failed at. They're the things that I knew I should have tried at, and then for whatever reason didn't.
Yeah, they haunt you. They haunt you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that in life, to some degree, you're always afraid. To some degree, there's always that kind of hesitation, and I find that a lot of it is that whatever you're looking at, it's just a mystery. You have to pull the layers back. And when you pull the layers back and you get in and you start to understand something more, it removes that mystery and it removes a lot of that fear. But I won't lie. I still, I get up in the morning and I look at my book and I look at how many reviews are on there. And if I see a new one, there's still that little moment going, oh my God, I hope I didn't get trolled, or someone's like, this book is terrible, And so I've been pleased with really great reviews from some really, kind readers, and a lot of them have taken the time to kind of go over what the things that they liked and in these books, and so it's been really encouraging. But at the same point in time, there's still that fear that someone's not going to like your stuff, and that's the thing. That's the scary thing when you put your real name out there and you let people know you're a writer, and you get a horrible review, and you go, oh my God, everybody's going to see I'm a terrible writer, that this person hated the story, and the reality is that's not the case. Keep selling books, and the reviews are high, but yeah, there's always that fear. There's that fear that whatever you've worked so hard for, struggled so hard for, or really internalized and kind of made your own, will never be there. And I think that until shortly, I had that fear about writing, which was, is this ever going to take off? Am I ever going to find an audience? Are these people ever going to read my stuff and like it and tell other people about it? And so for me, the Last War series, which has come on in the last 2 months, has really kind of revived me in terms of writing, because I've met with a level of success that I've struggled for a long time. So
yeah, that is amazing. Congratulations. And from what I've read so far of The Last War, you totally deserve it. That's part of the thing as well, is in this writing career, and probably any career you pursue, you try different angles, and it's like the failure we're talking about, or I would even say the Swan series is a failure, but just not to the degree of success that you're looking for. Then you try something else, and eventually, if you keep at it and you keep up in your game, something sticks,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're 100% right on that. It's a culmination of everything. Like, I looked at with writing. Writing has made me better at what I do in the auto industry, because I've got a great command of the English language compared to a lot of people in life and in that industry. And some of the characters that I've studied for in my Swan series have really kind of shaped me differently. One of the characters that I have in my Swan series was Braden, and Braden started basically a course of being a pickup artist. So I really kind of delved deep into the pickup artist community, because I think that the comedic element, my God, it was rich for that. So I get into this whole network of these people who are pickup artists. I'm like, oh my God, look at the fertile fields, right?
I've delved into it. It is a thriving subculture, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's a huge subculture, and it's ridiculously cool, because, you're essentially what it is you're learning to talk to people, and you're learning to say different things. So when I work with people, I always say different things, different ways to kind of stand out. And really the use of language, as, boring or nerdy as this is going to sound, the use of language is exciting to me, because words evoke so many feelings and they take things in so many different directions that if you can get it right and, you can inject humor and, you can really be someone different than what people are most used to seeing, then I think it helps you kind of stand out as an individual a little bit. So it's funny because my writing career has fed my sales career, and my sales career has fed my writing career, and martial arts and cars has come into all of it. And the understanding of females to the extent that I understand them has helped me write some really good, strong, female characters. And so it's funny because as you get a little bit older in life, all these things start to come together. And I think they've come together right, both in my sales career and also in writing. But my passion's always been writing. I've always really felt like going in and working in the real world, if you will, is all in support of writing, which is the career that I'm most focused on. And I'll do this until Amazon's no longer around, books are no longer printed, or I'm dead. I'll be writing until then.
I think that means you've got a long stretch ahead of you. That's good.
Yes. Long, good stretch.
And I want to say, it's so true that what you're talking about as you get older, and kind of these different parts of your life and personality all start to come together to form this sort of bigger experience that is your life. And that's one of the things that feels like in high school is what is so horrible about it. And I have to say, there's a lot of horrible things about high school, but you just feel like you're just different pieces of one person and nothing fits, So
right. Yeah. 100%.
So if you're in high school out there and listening to this, or maybe just past high school, trust us, it can get a lot better. It doesn't get better on its own. You do have to work at it, but man, it can get so much better.
You get more comfortable with life, and you're able to pick your friends and not hang out at, you're not forced into this ecosystem of, ego and status. So, as much as, you can be. This is California. So, and the Swan series was about that quite a bit. Yeah, I was bullied as a kid when I was younger, and I think that's part of the reason I got into martial arts and later in life is that completely changed my life. And I had a great sensei too. I still have a great sensei, but these things changed my life, but it also shapes you when you're young. And the Swan series is a lot about that. It's about bullying and the effects of it, and digging down into a character and realizing kind of a lot of the trauma that goes on in high school. For some people, it's good. For some people, it's bad. I can tell you this: most of the popular people that come out of high school don't end up being what you think they might be.
Yeah, and, exactly.
Some of them do. Some of them do. But
I do think you're right there. There is it isn't quite an inverse relationship, but to some degree there is.
Yeah, I've noticed it. It was funny because I saw the most popular guy in high school. He was on one of these shows, and man, he just looked like he'd aged 100 years. I was like, "What happened to this dude? He had the coolest hair, and now he's got no hair." And I'm sure that he lives a good life and is happy. He was always a nice kid, but it's really strange when you look back. I went to high school in Arizona, so I haven't been back to any of the reunions. It's been I graduated in 1990, so it's been 28 years, almost coming up on 30 years. I haven't seen these people, and it's always interesting to look at, how life has turned out for them. And I'm so happy to see life has turned out well for a lot of these people. But there are definitely a lot of surprises along the way. And I think that if you can kind of take high school with a grain of salt and say, hey, you know what, this was this world, but this is a new world. I loved college. I really, really loved college. That's where I met my wife, but I had entirely too much fun in my first years too. But going to college was a experience that was different from high school because you get to choose your friends. People don't care about the stuff that they care about in high school. That cliquey crap that you have to deal with was not really there. And it was, for anyone who's listening that is in high school, man, the world's a lot better outside it. But you do get some really good stuff from high school, and you do learn some good things.
Yeah, I think simple survival. That's one.
Yeah, survival techniques.
One thing I wonder is, and maybe this can go and encourage folks who may be listening in high school as well, is maybe it's not great if you're the most popular, happy person in high school, because then there is the potential that all of your best years are behind you, and so your life is kind of backward looking.
Yeah, when I wrote the Swan series, I watched this series on TV, and this was a while ago. I watched a series on TV. It was called "If Only You Knew Me." I think that's what it was, and it was this really great show about a group of people that went around and was gathering people together where they could sit down and say, "If only you knew me," is the starting sentence, and it was surprising to see really kind of how lonely and sad some of these people who were very popular were. But the other thing too is the popularity. A lot of people were hiding so much behind their emotions, like they were hiding abusive relationships at home, or, broken homes, or not feeling, maybe losing a friend, or having people who have died. I had a couple of friends in high school that died in my 11th grade, and it was really, really sad. Right. But in high school, we learn to put on this amazing face for all of the traumas that take place in our mind on a daily basis. We hide them. And I think popular people are no different than that. No different than the in the middle of the fray people as well. And then now I look at people who were not popular and who were kind of rejected or bullied, and I have such great empathy for what they might have dealt with or what they did deal with to get to the place that they were. And of course, that's where my character Savannah was born from in the Swan series.
Yeah, so it's an amazing. I haven't read that series yet, but the setup sounds absolutely amazing, and it is so true. I mean, there's the experiences we have in high school and kind of moving forward from there. In some ways, shape us so much that it takes a while in life to overcome it or adjust, or and some people never do. But that is kind of one of the big challenges.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm fortunate. I'm a psychologist kid, so I've had a lot of years of introspection, and my mom is just absolutely amazing. My dad is super supportive, so I've been very, very fortunate to have some amazing parents, and I love my sisters to death. I got 4 of them, and they're all great. So I've been fortunate to grow up in a pretty good household, and I think that as a support system growing up was really important. But even through life, man, you lean so much on your family for when you need them in those moments, and the fact that they've always been there for me has been pretty cool. So yeah. I feel blessed. For sure.
Well, Ryan, it's one thing I have to note here is speaking with you is such a pleasure. You obviously come across as a deep thinker, someone who doesn't just skate along the surface of life. So this has been a fascinating discussion. Well,
thank you so much, man. I'm so happy that you reached out to me, and this has been a really good experience. So for sure.
Right on. Well, before I'm looking at it's hilarious. I'm looking at my list of questions here, and I think I actually got to 3 of however many I have here. But that's actually, I mean, it's good that I got to those 3. I was kind of like, hey, that was a bit of effort there. Oh, good.
Depends, I guess, on how long your list was. If the list was 4, we're 75% there.
Oh, true. I'll just say the list was more than 4, but it's actually, that's one of the things I love about these interviews is I kind of basically just go in with some things that we could potentially talk about, but the real adventure and the real beauty in the conversation and what I enjoy amongst one of the most things I enjoy is just that it's a bit like life, it's like a microcosm of life. We're seeing kind of where this goes together. It's very cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, man, I got to tell you, your voice is amazing. I don't know what you do in life, but on podcasts, man, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Your voice is amazing.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Now you're making me blush. I don't have a mirror nearby, but I feel like I'm blushing.
Oh, man, we're all in the places we're supposed to be, right?
Right on, right on. All right. Well, before we go, and these are the questions I'm definitely going to get to, because it's a little segment of the show called the Rorschach Round.
Yeah, man, let's go.
Welcome to the Rorschach Round, where we use ambiguously odd questions to delve deeper into the minds of these amazing authors. Let's get started. All right, are you ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Question number 1. What is the number 1 thing that you haven't done yet that you would love to do?
Oh, man, I want to go skydiving.
Oh, it's
That's
so much
the one
fun.
thing. Yes, there's a place up in Lodi that's pretty close to us that I have not gone. Again, my bucket list is more like a 55-gallon drum list. I've got a lot of stuff, but yeah, I would say that skydiving is definitely number 1. 2 would be to get to Europe. So I'll wait for some of the craziness to die down over there. But yeah, number 1 would be skydiving for sure.
Right on. And if you do get to Europe, you should definitely go check out your ancestral homeland, Holland. Totally beautiful. Been there once. Loved it to death.
Oh man, now you make me want to go.
All right. So maybe that's in the top 10, maybe.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
And question number 2, if you were to have an autobiography, what would it be titled?
101 Ways in Which I Screwed Up My Life and Somehow Came Out Amazing.
It's a long title, but it's punchy.
Yeah, right. That's the real story. The other one would be, I don't know, if I had a short title, it would be probably Growing Up.
I like both of them.
Yes.
All right. Question 3. If you could have a cybernetic implant, which would you choose?
Oh, man. Something to do with physical strength and stamina. I'll be a bionic man. There we go.
I like it.
Yes.
And the older I get, the more, strangely, or maybe not strange at all, the more I like that idea.
I know, right? That way things don't ache so bad.
Yeah, I just find it, after like a workout the next day or whatever, it used to be like, 5 minutes and I'm ready to go. And now it's like 30 minutes and I may be ready to go.
I know. And 2 days later, you're looking for like the miracle cure to everything aching. We turn into research freaks when it comes to that.
All right. Question 4, maybe. I don't know. Whatever the next question number is.
Yeah.
If you could choose which and this is going to sound crazy, but let's just run with it. Which apocalypse would you prefer? It's like Dial of Doom.
Oh, man. Dial of Doom. What would I choose? Man, you know what? It's funny because I'm thinking about like my next series and what it'll be about. So I've got, we got zombies, we've got EMP strikes, we've got nuclear weapons, we've got, the sun. I'm going to have to go with probably nuclear apocalypse. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, right something that doesn't devastate the entire world because I still want to live through it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Right on. And then these next 3 questions are just the type where you just answer them off the top of your head, whatever comes first.
Okay.
Here we go. The Terminator or Conan the Barbarian?
Terminator, man. Terminator.
Okay. And this may have answered the next question, but we'll do it anyway. The Terminator or the Exterminator?
Definitely the Terminator would kick the Exterminator's ass. So I would definitely say the Terminator.
It's true. The Orkin guy I see on the commercials, he's got a very friendly smile, but he just would not survive Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's so true. The young Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes.
Yes, it's true. All right. Okay. So then last question of the Rorschach round. The Model T800, which was the Schwarzenegger version, or the Model T1000, which was the blobby metallic formable version?
You know what? I was going to say T1000, but there's something brutal and archaic and just badass about the T800. So you know what? I'm going to go with the T800. I may lose, but it's going to be really cool losing if you're a T800.
All right, here we go. I'm going to add some applause. We finished the Rorschach round.
Yay.
Right on. Ryan, it has been an absolute pleasure. I think we've gone on a little longer just because it has been so enjoyable.
That's okay.
But before we go, I wanted to find out, and we had, it sounds like you'd mentioned it a few times there, but to get it here at the end, what upcoming projects can we look forward to from you?
Well, I'm finishing with the Infernal Regions now. So I've got the first series, the first book, which is The Last War. You can get the free short story. It's not short story. It's 100 pages, but you can get the free story, The 0 Hour, through links inside the book. But a lot of people haven't done that, which is okay. So I made The 0 Hour available for sale. It's going to be out on the 10th. The Ophidian Horde is the second book. I'm finishing the Infernal Regions right now. After that, I'll do the 9th and final book in the Swan series, and then kind of depending on how this series, the Last War series goes, I think I'm going to keep building on it because there's such a wide landscape that I can utilize the way the story is set up, that if people like it, I'll keep writing it. And, if not, I'll do another series. I really like the post-apocalyptic fiction series, and I'll probably do it at this point in time from a man's standpoint, which should be interesting. So that's what's on the horizon, my friend.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. And I totally agree with you. There is, and maybe this is in any story world, but if you just take that authorial lens and kind of push it over here, then you've got like a whole new set of happenings, events, and stories going on.
Exactly. And then if they can kind of somehow have ties to each other, it creates a larger landscape. And I think that's fun as a writer, but also as a reader.
Oh, yeah. I'm totally in the same boat with you there. Right on. And then if folks want to find out more about you in particular, personally, and what you do, where should they go to look?
They can go to my website, which is www.ryanschow.com. That's RYANSCHOW. And then mostly, man, I'm just digging into my writing and absolutely loving it. So I've got, they can jump onto the Facebook page, which there's links inside the book. And then, of course, my author bio on Amazon. But I think if you want to know what's going on with me, read my books, man. That's where my head's at. I'm interested in cars and AI and girls who can kick ass.
It's funny because I love all of those things.
Yeah, right?
Right on. Well, Ryan, it has been absolute pleasure. Like I said, I feel like you're the kind of guy that you have kind of such a below the surface, kind of deeper look at the topics we're looking at in life and writing, et cetera, that it's just a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure's been mine. Thank you so much for the invite. Take care, Ryan.
That was a very, very good show. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did, even if you didn't enjoy my singing just now. I'm assuming you did. I'm just going to assume that. I'm going to look around the room, and if anyone did not enjoy that singing, just raise your hand, please. All right. I don't see any hands raised, so therefore it went very well. Okay, moving on. So that was a fantastic interview. Lots of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so much to Ryan for joining us. And if you would like to check out any of the links mentioned in the show today, you can go to the typical place. You know where, William O'Day, do I know? I think I do. WilliamO'Day.com/ the number of the episode, in this case, 19. That's it for today. If you would like to be sure to never miss a show and always have them immediately available on your device of choice, you can subscribe by going to www.williamodday.com/iTunes. And if you enjoyed the show, I would so appreciate a rating and review on iTunes. They both help with store visibility, and they also let other listeners know if this show is something that they might be interested in checking out. And I've made it easy to access both of those by going to the same link on my website, www.williamodday.com/iTunes. That will have a link there that you can jump over to either subscribe and or maybe all three, rate and review the show. So I would so appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's it for now. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the OMG Book Show. You can find out more at www.williamodday.com.